Howdy chaps, and welcome back to another fantastic episode. Now, we had a massive response to me changing up the format slightly. I think I might have gone too far with the time lapse. I went too much time lapse versus not enough talking, but it's a balancing act. So this time I'm going to try and get it about 50-50. Some people like it more time lapse, some people like it more talking, but unfortunately, as a lovely chap once said to me, you can't make everybody happy, and it's not your job to make everybody happy. So unfortunately, some people won't like the ratio and some will. So win some, lose some. But I'm going to attempt to get it sort of evenly playing fielded. So what I'm going to do, first task is, now that I have opened up a hole, I won't be cutting it back any further due to I needed to save the end shape because, well, there's nothing wrong with it, so why cut it off? And I'm a bit reluctant to, me personally, I don't like cutting more off than needs to be, because if you start replacing giant chunks of car, well, it's not really an original car anymore, and you might as well have built one from scratch. Sort of a weird ratio, but I prefer to try and keep as much of the original car there as possible. But I mean, if they're totally stuffed, well then that's just bad luck. So the end is still there. I don't think I'm going to cut any more of the actual outer skin off for now, but don't be surprised if I do. But I'm going to cut the outer wheel tub lower section out. I've got to get that out and then blast it and see what is actually left of it before I rebuild it and put it back in, because after you cut open the outer skin and see what's left, you pretty much have to remove that lower wheel tub section because it welds to the inner rear quarter section. It's like a filler piece, so it sort of sits in the middle and joins the two of them together, whereas the lower quarters come together and do that. So I've got to get that piece out, fix it, and then before I actually put it back in, then you just put in a big rectangle piece with a slight kick at the bottom to replace the lower section of the inner rear quarter. But I mean, on a situation where on these, if it was super bad, you would just buy the $40, I think it was $40 inner rear quarter section and just zip it in through the boot floor. I mean, that is a much faster way to do it, but it's faster and it's not. It's sort of a balancing act. If it's really gone, then do the whole thing, but if it's only a little bit gone, there's no point splitting other welds and seams and joins and everything and making yourself a much bigger task. But time for an intro, and then we'll show you the ins and outs. Right, so this is what I was talking about just then. This piece has got to come out before you can repair this piece because it slips behind there. I don't suspect, or should I say, I have a suspicion there probably won't be much holding that to this, mainly because there's not much of this left. There is that actual hole there. You can see it's actually mostly round. There is actually from factory a hole there for when the cars go through a dipping process. It's to allow the fluid to come back out, and then they just put a grommet in them. But of course dirt and stuff builds up over 40 odd years and rusts them out like this. This is actually a good one. Most of this is still here. There is actually somewhere around here should be another plug, but this one's still good. You still got the original pressing from Ford in there. So I'm going to cut this out and then run it through the sandblaster, and then we can work on this. It's a real shame that this has gone here because it would have been nice to have just done a repair through here, but of course it was like no, I'm going to make your life slightly more difficult than it needed to be. So we'll actually have to look in there. I'll probably have to take most of this section out, I reckon, just because of where it is. So this panel slips between this back panel and this filler piece here. So you can tell this car is actually a pretty good one because most of this filler panel is still here and fairly well untouched. Even has some factory scribbles on it. So, and that's what I was talking about before. If this is really gone, the problem you get is it's stuck between these two panels, so you have to do a fair bit of splitting to get them out. But luck of the draw, we're not going to do that. We're going to just replace the bottom section of it and carry on that way. But first task is to remove this, and I will have to, because my air saw is dead, I'll have to do it in a less than fun manner. But we'll catch you up in a second. So we got that piece off. Recip saw, it might have been a bit overkill, but my snap-on air saw is dead. But it was a bit tricky because of where the spot welds were. They weren't where they were accessible, they were tucked up in the corner. So we'll walk you through this piece over here. So this now needs to have a trip through the sandblaster, and I'm having doubts much of it's going to come back, but yeah, we got it off. Now comes the time to rebuild it all, but we've got to blast it first. But at least we've got something to work from, so that's going to be fun. It's just going to be lots of little pieces stuck together. So I'll show you that once I've blasted it. Right, so this has been through the blaster. It's looking a little bit sad. I also have this one I saved off a Landau I did ages ago. It's actually for the most part in actually a lot better condition, so I'm wondering whether or not I should use that one. But they're both original pieces, as you can tell. This one is actually significantly better, but on the Landau I actually rebuilt this whole piece from scratch, which is why I actually happened to have it. But I wasn't game to throw it out because it's such an unusual shape. So what I'm going to do is just use the pair of them and just repair it piece by piece. So first thing I do is do a fold on a piece of tin about that far. I mean, that bit's missing, but I can tell that right about here it goes across, so it needs to have a little tab, and I'll weld that in and replace that little section, and then I'll probably do another piece through here and then replace that section, and then do another piece. It'll just be bit by bit. It's just how I like to work. I prefer to take it easy, as I kick something, take it in easy stages rather than just hacking the living snot out of things. If you go gently at things and things turn out to be better than you expect, well then you've saved yourself a ton of work. If you just hack the living snot out of things, it's a pretty good recipe for screwing things up. I always say do exploratory cuts first, like what I did on that quarter panel down there. I only picked at it a little bit. I just wanted to see if I could save as much of it as possible, but unfortunately the more I dug, the further the rust went, despite how good it looked. So I was taught at trade school to do exploratory cuts. You don't just go hacking stuff off left and right. You take bits and then you just go a little bit further and a little bit further. It seems like it would take longer to do things, but it's a bit of a neater way of doing things, especially if you can save as much of the car as possible, because once you start replacing giant chunks, it's not really the original car anymore. It's like a new car built out of parts. But that's just how I operate. If you know, if you do things differently, well, good good to you, but this is how I operate, and this is how I was trained to. So I tend to do, like I just said, little bits at a time, because it's a good way to not become overwhelmed by stuff as well. And if you hack tons of it out, you'll be like, oh, well, where did this piece go? So I'm going to start very simply by just doing that little piece and make that small section and weld it in, and then work my way through it, rather than trying to fabricate all that in one go, especially considering I don't quite have all of the right equipment to be able to make this in one piece. So unfortunately I have to do it in bits, and there's nothing wrong with doing it like that anyway. So I'll just get stuck into it. Unfortunately I didn't actually charge my camera last night, so if the footage changes quality halfway through, you'll know I switched to my phone. So pretty simple. I'll get my verniers, measure that, and trim a piece up. I'll try and walk you through this one. Well chaps, unfortunately that time lapse was probably a bit faster than you'd like, but that's because I had to switch to the phone, and the phone's time lapse is quite a bit faster than this one, unfortunately. But I hope you can slow it down and rewatch it. I might be able to slow it down when I edit it. If not, unfortunately it's going to be a little bit on the fast side. But that's the gist of whittling up the new piece. Now I will tweak it a bit more as it goes in, but that is going to be a pretty good, whoop, as I drop it, pretty good fit in there. It's not going to be an exact copy, but it's going to be better than what is currently there, which is nothing. So pretty much fold, trim, and then bench vices are a wonderful thing. I sort of put it in the nooks and tapped it gently around until it had a really nice radius curve. So I hope you got the gist of that one. So we'll put this one in, and then we'll whittle up the next one, eh? Alrighty, next piece is in. Looking not too shabby. Now the bottom moved around a bit because this piece of tin is like super weak, but I have this one to copy off and this one is going along quite swimmingly, so we'll just join in the next one. I know I need to trim this piece down because it's just a little bit wide through here, but it's all not too shabby. So we'll do the next piece, it'll be through here, and I'll put a little hole in it for the drain hole, and then I'll have to switch to the other camera, to the phone, basically go back to the phone because this one is dying. That's what you get for not charging your phone, your camera. Anyway, I'll do the next piece and hopefully get that one in, and hope the time lapse looks pretty good. Alrighty, so we've switched to the other phone camera thing. Doesn't matter, but you get the gist of what we're up to. So I've made my new piece, well, the next piece in the equation. Zoom in. Holes line up. It's very hard to do this one-handed, but what you're going to get is the gist of it. So making it in stages is actually a very effective way of doing a repair like this. So I'm not too worried about the stuff behind because it's a good breeze and it moves, so that's going to go like that. I might tweak it a little bit more, but that's going to weld in there, and then the next piece will be going around that way. Very straightforward, eh? And of course it should, in theory, look pretty close to the right shape when it's done. Ultimately I'll make sure it's 100%, or at least as close as I can physically make it before it goes in the car, but it gives you some idea. I wanted the two of them to blend in really nicely because the factory thing does have a lovely curve through the corner there. So the curve was already there, so I just whittled this one down so that it matches in nicely. And then I'll just run a blade through here, down here, and across here, and that piece behind it should just fall off. But I'll tack this, I'll just do this, push this in here, and then just tack these two together. Yeah. Tack the corners together, and then just work my way around it pretty straightforwardly. But making good progress. So the two pieces are in and actually looking rather lovely. Now the next one might be slightly trickier because it's got to sort of wrap around a corner, but I'm sure I'll be able to suss it. But Pretty straightforward, 2 pieces in there, and pretty much majority of it is done. I'm pretty happy with that actually, and it's sort of, I mean, it's not an exact copy because I ain't no magician, but it sort of resembles the original piece. But anyway, this bit's next, and I suspect we may do this in 2 bits as well, just for ease. I might go down around the side and then put a piece in there in the middle, if that makes sense to you chaps. But so that the video isn't astronomically long, I'm going to actually catch up when I've done it, because I realise if I put too much time lapse and too much catching up of bits, it's going to be an epically long video. So I do need to cut some stuff, but I thought I'd show you some of the hand fabricating bits. So that's at least something, eh? So we'll catch up when I've got the next piece done. Right, I'm going to actually wrap this video up here because I am slightly horrified it's going to be too long, although, mind you, knowing me, I'll probably do the editing and go, wow, that was too short. But I really do hope you enjoyed a bit more in-depth into the making of doodads and hoo-has. 4 individual pieces went into this. There was one here, and you saw both of them. There was also, and it's still exceptionally hot, I put a strip down here, and then I put a piece, if I can get that to stay there, through the top here. So there's a weld going down around that edge. But yeah, that's looking lovely. I'll coat that with a bit of olive etch, and then in the next video, which shouldn't have so much intricacies, should be pretty straightforward, and we just chop out that other piece on the car there, put a piece in, put this back in, and put on the next piece. So I'll make sure that that's all in one video. But I wanted to see if I could get the ratios a bit right with the time lapse versus talking. So I hope you enjoy this one, and a bit of in-depth model making, kinda. No, semi resembles the original, an original piece, which I think is, you know, passable, especially in an area you're never going to see, or, you know. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and see you on the next one.